That was the raucous crowd last night. That was audio of the raucous crowd
They were,
at that
though.
Colts-Vikings game.
They were when they started to do the wave and then started throwing their programs in the air, and the PA guy came out and said, "Please do not throw things in the stadium," and that made them throw the programs more. They were raucous,
man.
unruly.
So this is a Sunday morning edition of Purple Daily here. Daily Vikings entertainment presented by Surly Brewing Company. And we are from our home TCL studios. Enjoy more of what you love with TCL. It's Phil Mackey. It's Judd Zulgad. And Mike Zimmer, I think, prides himself on having his team ready early and dominant in the preseason, right? I mean, he's been a really good – their preseason record has been pretty darn good. I don't have it in front of me, but they usually win a lot of preseason games. Mm-hmm. And let's just cut to the chase. They've looked terrible in their first two preseason games. Now, the defense didn't give up 30-plus like it did in week one of the preseason, and more starters played this week than last week. But we need to have an open, honest, frank, and somewhat panicked discussion, I think anyways, about what we're seeing offensively. Not only with the first team unit last night played the whole first quarter, basically, and then you got another taste of the backup quarterback competition. So, Judd, you were watching, I was watching intently. You were watching, I think, intently even with binoculars at one point.
Oh, yeah, we had the binoculars out, no question about it.
So give me your assessment and glean from Mike Zimmer's demeanor after the game. Give me your assessment of where things stand offensively for this team right now.
Boy, what word do I start with? What condescending, uncomplimentary word do I start with? For 8 quarters of football, no touchdowns. The defense is outscored. The offense as far as touchdowns go. 7 rip. The offense has 3 field goals in 2 games, and that's it. And yet I feel like this discussion needs to, like, I don't want to include the entire offense. Like Kellen Mond, Kellen Mond's a kid. He's learning. I mean, he might be good. He might be bad. I have no idea. But to me, this gets back to this, Bill, and this is why, as monotonous as it can become at times, it's valuable to be at practice. I want to talk about what Cousins in the first team offense, which did not have, in fairness, Justin Jefferson or Dalvin Cook, what they did not do again last night, and Cousins in particular, and this is not me picking on him. This is an observational thing that I asked Zimmer about post-game, and he could have shot me down, and he didn't. Since he got back from quarantine, Kirk Cousins has not been sharp. And what you saw last night, so if he had been going great guns in practice, and the offense comes out, and you know what, they're not very good, I'd be like, okay, but Phil, he's looked really good in practice. Like, this probably is just a blip, or they're trying things, or whatever you want to say. But what you guys all saw last night is what we've been seeing in practice for a few weeks now, which is Kirk makes some throws, but for him, I find him to be indecisive. I find that some of his passes aren't on target. Let's start with, I believe it was play 5 last night. Let's start with that one. First series, and Kirk throws a pass to Thielen, who's running a slant route, and he damn near gets him killed. He basically throws it right into the middle of the field, and Thielen, if that had been a regular season game, could have been decapitated. Now, the defender, to his credit, did pull up a bit because it's a preseason game and nobody really wants to get hurt. But I think the most important thing to get across is what we saw last night is what I've been seeing in practice now since he got back from quarantine.
Yeah.
Something doesn't seem on point because, look, for all the grief we give Kirk Cousins, when Kirk Cousins is going well, pretty damn good quarterback. That's not what we're seeing, and I don't know why.
And you always do have to, because even Thielen got banged up last night, and we'll see. It doesn't sound like it's anything serious, but you know, once you get past Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook's not playing, there is a huge grain of salt to sort of take anything you see offensively with, because now all of a sudden you're playing with, at best, second-string receivers.
Right.
And I would even argue if all of a sudden, you know, if KJ Osborne has a lot of potential, but like he's not a rotation wide receiver right now in the NFL. Maybe he'll prove himself to be. So definitely a huge block/grain of salt for that offensive performance because of the weapons that weren't available. But overall, the Vikings offensive line, and I got the PFF grades are fresh, hot off the press, and they break down everybody's performance. The offensive line, according to PFF, was a lot better than it was in the first preseason game. It was better in run blocking than pass blocking, but they allowed 8 total pressures, 5 of them by Blake Brandel, the backup left tackle that was in there for 31 snaps. He had a rough night last night. Rashod Hill also had a rough night, and that was visible with the eye test too. There was one play in particular that he just got beat. Kirk got sacked.
Kwity Paye.
Yeah, Kwity Paye. Who was probably the most mocked player to the Vikings during mock draft season. So I have a hard time fully going all in with the panic button right now because it is preseason. There is still 3 weeks to figure this thing out, and Kirk is a veteran quarterback. He's without his top weapons. But something has just seemed off the entire time since 3/4 of the quarterback room was put into quarantine for a week, and in Kellen Mond's case, a week and a half. It doesn't feel like Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins are ever like fully rowing in the same boat and on the same page. It always feels like they're just coexisting. And so, I don't know, like listening to Mike Zimmer's comments last night, it just kind of feels like whenever he's asked about the defense, it's like a personal affront and it's his thing to fix, right?
Right.
He's blaming people, but it's also like his personal responsibility.
Right. Yeah,
Whenever he's asked about the offense and Kirk and the passing game or whatever it may be, the offensive line, it's almost like he's removing himself from it and like looking over there condescending, like, well, I don't know, they got to,
Right.
They got to fix their stuff over there. That's the feeling I get when I soak all this in.
Yep. And so after the game last night, I asked Mike about the fact that, and I said this is purely observational from my standpoint, but it looks like since he got back from quarantine, Kirk has not really practiced as well or been as sharp as you guys would probably like. And I mean, he could have said, you know what? You ain't a coach, Judd. Shut up and sit down. And he sort of went through the answer and said, look, there's some looks in practice that he gets that are probably more towards, our defense and that he might not be able to do all of the things he wants. But his last statement, which to me in coach speak is a pretty powerful one, was you'll have to ask him, which is code for, I don't necessarily disagree completely with what you said, but ask him. So yeah, I think that there is definitely, I think there's always been a disconnect there. I think the whole vaccine, non-vax discussion probably has ratcheted up the I don't know if the right word is acrimony between the two, but something feels off. And that's why I'm with you. If Justin Jefferson's not playing, I'm not going to panic. If Dalvin Cook's not playing, I'm not going to panic. However, I would like to see more. And in those 3 series, Phil, I think it's very fair to say we saw nothing. Like ordinarily, right? You get a good series in, right? You get lathered up and you get a good series.
It's target practice. The defenses aren't doing anything to disguise. They're just playing vanilla-based defenses. It's your time to throw darts and to sit back there and be comfortable and receivers to be open. Remember when Sage Rosenfels carved it up like 10 years ago in training camp? Oh,
Stella really wanted in. She
at Stella.
Knocked the door open, and she's very upset about last night.
What needs to happen for you to change Stella's name to Surly now?
Not a lot, actually.
Well, you could just get a second dog and name the second dog.
It's very possible. Surly and Furious. I'll get 2 dogs.
I love it. Actually, we could also change Stella's name to Federated because Federated is also a partner of Purple Daily here. Oh, Federated.
All that
Who's
work,
a good Federated? Who's a good girl?
And now she wants down.
By the way, Federated's been helping businesses. So think of Federated as your offensive line. And by the way, they are better protecting businesses than the Vikings offensive line has been protecting Kirk and quarterbacks, especially Rashod Hill last night. He would never be able to be on that Federated staff. So they provide risk management tools and resources and all kinds of great knowledgeable people that are also Minnesota sports fans, a lot of them down there. I've had a chance to meet many of them. So check them out, federatedinsurance.com. And remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. Before we get into backup quarterbacks, because Jake Browning and Kellen Mond both played a lot, had a lot of opportunities, 2-minute drills. Both guys had chances toward the end of their respective halves to do some damage. I've got the PFF grades in front of me, just for fun here. Let me pull up the full team here because I just have the offensive line report open right now. But who would you guess, based on your eye test, who would you guess were the 2 or 3 best players last night? And I'll give you a hint. They're all offensive line.
Okay.
And then who would you guess was the worst player last night, according to PFF?
All right, let me start with my guess on the worst player. I'm going to go with an obvious one, but the performance was so subpar, and I think the way that they grade would call this guy's performance out. The worst player to me that I saw of importance, I guess, too, was Jake Browning.
So he was the worst player I saw as well. He was, and last week you were already after last week's game saying, "Hey, let's just call a spade here. He can't be like the guy that comes in and starts 3 games if Kirk goes down." And I said, "All right, listen, hold on. Let's see another game." His teammates seem to love his leadership. Mike Zimmer went on that raving, praise, like, "Oh, he's a guy teammates gravitate toward. He's a get it done guy, especially in the 2-minute drill, right?"
Yep.
That was one of the worst quarterback performances and most nervous, skittish NFL quarterback performances I've ever seen last night. It was really bad.
Yeah,
and even like, God, like he sits, and I get that you can be a little skittish because things are moving fast and it's an NFL game, it's a preseason game. But even when the pocket was clean, he was seeing ghosts every single time, and then he was misfiring by 5-10 yards. It was really, really bad.
And the problem too is because he's not a very big guy, and this is what makes Russell Wilson so damn exceptional, right? He's not a big guy, and he gets it done, and he makes it look easy. Jake Browning's what a normal guy his height trying to play quarterback in this league would look like, which is you can't find receivers at times, his mechanics at times. I mean, he probably threw 5 passes that were assuming that the intended receiver was like a 7'2" tight end. Like they sailed over their head or they were way too short. So yeah, I was guessing Browning just because I thought that performance overall grade wise was so feeble.
So he wasn't the worst player. In fact, he wasn't even close to the worst player. I don't know how. He wound up with, on a 1 to 100 scale, he wound up with a 68 grade overall.
Okay.
And I think my guess is they probably gave him some credit because toward the end of the second quarter, he did start to lock in a little bit more and complete some passes. But the worst graded player was Kellen Mond. And I don't know if I buy that. He was a 38.1 overall. Out of 33 offensive players graded, he was last. But who am I? Like I'm just a guy who likes to watch football. Like the last time I played football was in 8th grade. I played backup tight end. I have no idea. Like I'm not a scout. But watching that game last night, Jake Browning looked as uncomfortable and as like non-quarterbacky. Accuracy, everything was just bad.
Right.
Mond looked a lot more cool, calm, and collected than Browning did. Like he looked like the game was still moving pretty fast, but he ultimately looked like he was comfortable and had presence in the pocket and like he's done it a million times. And so I guess I'm a little surprised that he was the worst graded offensive player overall.
It probably also hurt Mond that and this is actually a good thing for him, but his playing time was so extensive, it gave him time to drag his grade down.
Yeah.
Because I think he played the entire second half.
Yeah.
Or most of it.
And then the only other thing I'll say off the backup quarterbacks is I am definitely coming toward your side of the fence here, and that I think Mond should be rising above Browning in this competition, but I don't want Mond to be the first guy in like week 2 if Kirk gets hit from the blind side or something.
Correct.
Mond should just I've got belief in Mond long term. He doesn't need to be anywhere near an NFL playing field in the first 8 weeks, and so they need to find someone, like a veteran of some kind that you can just put in there and he's not going to see ghosts every time he drops back.
If Kellen Mond has to play, I think this season at all, something's gone drastically wrong. And Zimmer said last night, you know what? And he's right. He's like judging rookie quarterbacks and stepping into this league like Mond is really difficult. And he needs to play, and this is the big but, and this is why Kellen Mond just needs to sit and learn and ask questions. But it's now time to start preparing to play games. It's not time to it's not the Kellen Mond, let's get him set to play someday tour. It's the by September 12th against the Bengals, we need to be prepared. And this offense, flat out does not look prepared. It does not look cohesive. The quarterback to me looks off. So the lack of continuity there is the story. So can Mond be the quarterback of the future? Very possibly. Don't know. But this is why right now I think, Phil, the Justin Fields Kellen Mond comparisons are probably unfair. Justin Fields is the first round pick. And I watched, because the Twins suck, I extensively watched a bunch of exhibition games in the last week or so. And I watched that entire Bears-Bills debacle yesterday. And Justin Fields made some mistakes, and he will struggle some. But you know what? If he had to play tomorrow, he could do it.
Yeah.
Kellen Mond, I think you would ruin him. I really do. I think you would be doing him the greatest disservice that you possibly could, which is why you need a veteran backup to Kirk. People get confused on this. I'm not talking about a veteran backup who's going to Canton. I'm talking about a veteran backup who can literally, and I keep saying this, but it's important, run a game. Jake Browning cannot run a preseason game.
Yeah, and I think by run a game, and I understand, because you were saying that last week too, and it was very evident. When I think run a game, I don't just think like get in the huddle, call the play. It's beyond that. It's if there's a wide open, if you drop back and the pocket's clean and there's a wide open guy out to the right for a 6-yard completion, you have to hit that guy.
Sure. Yeah.
Like if you drop back and you're overthrowing a guy by 6 or 7 yards, or the ball is falling between two receivers and neither one of them knows who's being targeted, like that's not running a game.
Correct.
Like and you watch enough NFL games, especially regular season games, where you start to get a feel for tempo of when a guy drops back and the pocket's clean, the ball comes out, and then if it's incomplete, it's because like the coverage was tight or something.
Correct.
And then when you see thousands and thousands and thousands of games and snaps and stuff, and then all of a sudden you watch Jake Browning drop back and the pocket's clean and he's skittish, and then he throws a ball and it lands in no man's land, and you're like, that's not NFL football. Like that's not
right.
what a quarterback should look like in an NFL football game.
Jake Browning, and this is to me, across all professional sports, this is the thing where it doesn't work. Jake Browning, the game, watch him play a game, that's how the game really looks. Like to you or me, that's how the game. So like we watch it on TV or from the press box, and we're like, of course, clean pocket, or of course you can check that ball down, or in basketball, look at that 3-point shot. That's not that tough. Look how easy it looked. And then you get a guy like Browning playing, and you're like, oh my God, that's how the game would look to me from the field.
There's like all these 300-pound humans in front of you, so it's hard to see. Yeah. And guys are moving really fast, and you'd just be, you're right.
And once in a while, your good friend Chad Beebe comes open, and you're like, oh, I can throw it to Chad Beebe.
Okay, so on the top end of the players who are graded the best, the players that we need to cheers to, we'll get to those player names. But what should we cheers with?
Well, you know what? The great thing about my friends from Surly, and I'm talking about Furious, but as people tweet me, and I appreciate this, all of your pictures of your Surly cans, I love the fact that there are so many.
Show us your cans. That's right.
Show us your cans at Jay Zolgan on Twitter. I start with Furious, but you could start with whatever you want. And when it comes to Surly, what we are cheersing to, or drowning our sorrows, drink responsibly, is the best beer in town. You do enough, and this is if I could have talked for a little bit longer last night to Zim, and instead of asking a question, I could have made a statement. This would have been my statement, Phil Mackey. Mike, you do enough settling in life. Crack open a Surly Furious and enjoy the IPA that revolutionized Minnesota craft beer. I don't want you to settle, Mike Zimmer. I want you to get Surly.
Don't settle for 9-8. Don't settle for Rashod Hill getting plowed over.
Show us your cans.
Yep. Show us your cans. The 3 best players in last night's game.
Yes.
All of them offensive linemen. Who would you guess they are?
How many first team guys are on this list? Because I watched the first team intently. Okay.
They all have something very much in common.
Oh, they're all tackles. Is that right? They're all guards? Okay, I'm going to go with, since I watched the first team intently, I'm going to go with one of them, and this is great news. This is actually really good news. Oli Udoh.
Oli Udoh was the top graded player according to Pro Football
So
Focus
he did
in that
play.
game last
Okay,
night.
it's very hard.
He played 15 snaps, 9 pass blocks, 6 run block, had an 83.8 grade.
Nice.
He was great last night, and
feel-
you didn't notice him negatively at all too, which is
Right.
what I look for.
And I feel like in watching a game on TV, it's very possible to like sort of judge the tackles. Interior line play, unless the guy's bad, is really hard.
You got to watch
judge.
the film. You got to watch the film.
But I sensed from the questions I got and the comments I got on the Instagram Live that I did after the game last night that he had played well, and that if you are the Vikings, that might be the best news that you come away from that game with, at least as far as offensively.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of the season. I don't want to be over dramatic here, but like the season kind of hinges on Oli Udoh being really good, or at least being average at worst. Because if all of a sudden you plug in another Dakota Dozier experiment and it doesn't work well, and now it's revolving door time and up the middle pressure, like Oli Udoh has to be good. And Rashod Hill is going to have to be good for the first month of the season until Christian Darrisaw's back.
Don't sleep on that one. That's exactly right.
All right, who are the second and third best players then?
If they're guards, well, I think you told me one before the show, so I'll
Dakota Dozier.
Dakota Dozier.
He was the second best player.
Overall,
of all the players offensively, he was the second best player last night.
That's remarkable, but I will say this. He was playing at least where he should play if he has to play with the backups. I don't know. Who was the third guard?
Wyatt Davis.
Oh.
All 3 right guards were the top 3 graded offensive players for the Vikings last night. So Wyatt Davis played 22 snaps, 15 in pass protection, and he was good across the board. In fact, he didn't allow a pressure. All 3 of those guys allowed 0 combined pressures playing, throughout their different stages of the game. So, hey, but this is like, especially from a Dakota Dozier standpoint, dude, you got trucked by backups last week. You're a veteran, man. I don't know why you're still here, but you are. And so this was probably, I don't know if he makes the team. If Wyatt Davis is playing well, like Wyatt Davis should just be the backup right guard.
Yep.
So then it'll just kind of depend on, do they keep Dakota Dozier as like the last sort of swing, veteran offensive lineman?
We've seen him at left guard, Phil. I'm good.
Well, aren't they also, Oli Udoh is being talked about as maybe playing left tackle too, right? Like they're trying to get him prepared to play left tackle and right guard in case of an emergency.
They said something like that. I call BS. He has been.
I don't know, man. Rashod Hill was a disaster last night.
I know, but Oli started training camp and he did get some snaps at tackle. And Mike very clearly said, and I agree with Mike on this, if he's going to play guard, like if we're switching him positions, he needs to play guard. So I don't think, unless something just went totally wrong, that he's going to be moved from a position at which he just got moved to and is actually playing pretty well. So he's been talked about in that vein, but I think that's just talk. I think he is your guard now, which is fine. He should play guard. Yeah. And do I have concerns about left tackle? Absolutely. The thing with Udoh is he's an unknown because he's switching positions, but the unknown scares you.
Yeah.
What scares you about Rashod Hill starting at left tackle is the known. We've seen him play.
Yeah,
like he's not a starter. He is a backup swing guy. And you know what? If a guy gets hurt, he is a guy you want on your 53-man roster to plug in. But that's not I wonder how he'll do as a starting left tackle. Like if you came to me in July and said, hey, we might have to start, I'd say, no, that's not. With Kirk Cousins as your QB. And you know what? When Kirk again got sacked last night, and I'm not blaming him, but watching that play unfold live from the press box, he had no idea. Like he doesn't have that radar. He just doesn't. He doesn't. And here's where I will tell you, I think it is a GPS built into your brain. In watching the Eagles-Patriots game, I think Thursday night, Mac Jones has that. Mac Jones is a rookie, but he has that ability to slide. He can slide the pocket around, and because he's good, it looks seamless. Kirk just is never going to have that. This is not a rip. It's something that you should have known a long time ago. But my point is, you're tempting fate by asking Rashod Hill to protect his blind side.
Yeah, I've always said, and like Kirk needs when Kirk gets the clean pocket, he's legitimately one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Like he is in the conversation for like a top. Like if every quarterback in the league is just like has a brick wall in front of them and has 3 seconds to throw, he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. It's kind of crazy to say, but like he's that good when the pocket's clean. But that's not how the NFL works. The NFL is a muddy, dirty, not literally. Usually the fields are pretty clean, except in Pittsburgh and Chicago.
Green Bay.
But like it's an off schedule league. It just is. Like and by off schedule, it doesn't always have to mean like run for your life outside the pocket and like pull a Russell Wilson. Off schedule can mean, oh my God, my right guard just got smoked on that play. I need to move a step to my left and make the offensive line better or look better. And I think he has less of that chip than like Tom Brady is the ultimate statue. And whenever I hear people compare like, well, he's a pocket passer too, and like look at his offensive line. Well, and Peyton Manning, like think about the best pocket passers of all time.
Yeah.
They are also nuanced, great at making those little steps as you need to take one step in, right? And Kirk doesn't have as much of that, so you have to keep him clean. You can't rely on him to sense something and move a step always.
Yep. The only thing in this conversation that could save Kirk, because he doesn't have that chip, is if he had an incredibly quick release, which Peyton did. Like Peyton spent a year or two playing for the Colts with Charlie Johnson, the former Viking, who couldn't block me as his left tackle. Yeah. But what did Peyton have? He had an incredibly quick release and feel. Kirk does not. Kirk needs some time. So that's where I think the Rashod Hill thing to me is a non-starter. And in Zimmer's defense on this, that's why I think he's so frustrated about the Darrisaw thing, because I'm pretty sure that he was told by people above him, hey, Christian Darrisaw had that procedure in January. He'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And, if the Vikings don't come out and say, we were planning on Christian Darrisaw starting week 1, they're lying. Like that. This
I don't know how
that
happens. He's not practicing anytime.
He's not going to. He's not going to. But the point is, I'm saying this, like Wyatt Davis.
Those every time I get an idea, that noise happens.
The chimes. It's the NBC chimes. Bum bum bum. So in the case of Davis, the Vikings can say, hey, look, you guys talked about him starting at right guard week 1, but he was never going to. And I'd be like, cool, that's fine. Christian Darrisaw, their plan was to start him at day 1, and now he can't. And Rashod Hill has to go, and that is a major issue for this team. Because you can't exactly go out and get hey, let's just go out and sign a left tackle. I mean, you could try and go Russell Okung. Jason Peters just signed it with the Bears, so there were options. But it was interesting. So Mike was asked last night post-game about the backup QB, because clearly we've all seen that Browning can't do that job. And he was asked about going out and getting a backup QB. And this is a very Zim thing. Interpret this as you will, Phil Mackey. Mike Zimmer said, he was pretty introspective about what he had seen. So he was not like flipping out or snapping at reporters, but he basically said, we got to be careful about the financial thing too. Now they do have some cap room, so I don't know what else they're going to try and go get. But
is he referring to like the cash flow?
I think
because there's cap space and then there's cash.
I don't know exactly what I took it as sort of a cap comment, and I don't know if it had to do with other people they want to bring in or what.
Well, they're also close. I'm sure they're close on Brian O'Neill extension. Are they going to load some of that money into this year?
Smith. Yeah, but it was interesting. Like it was very, hey, that's not a bad idea, but we have to be careful financially.
Yeah, to me, that comment means Brian O'Neill's about to get a contract extension, and they're going to load some of that money into the cap savings they have created throughout this summer. Yeah. Some other things from last night's game that we should at least touch on here. So Troy Dye had the defensive play of he was sort of the beneficiary of it was a tipped pass, if I'm not mistaken.
Armin Watts, right? Tipped it.
And Troy Dye was in the right place. He scoops it for an interception, a 33-yard pick six. I love that he doesn't wear gloves. Old school. Just out there. He's like the rare baseball player that just doesn't wear batting gloves.
Calloused, man.
Yeah.
He's got the calluses.
And then as bad as the Vikings kick and punt returning has been basically since Cordero Patterson and Marcus Sherrills left, Smith Marset last night had the 41-yard kick return. So he returned a combination of 3 kicks and punts for 80 yards in that game last night. He had a 17-yard punt return, and then he had kick returns of 23 and 41 yards. Mm-hmm. So if there's not a lot of things you get to judge players by in a shortened preseason like this, but I think Smith-Marsette, if there was any question, probably solidified his spot on the team and maybe even as a primary returner depending on D.D. Westbrook's status once we get closer to the season.
Yeah.
That was impressive last night.
Yeah, I like the fact. So I think KJ Osborne going into the season with Westbrook having been out as much as he is, I think KJ Osborne is the third receiver on opening day. But what Smith-Marsette brings from a return standpoint is a burst. KJ Osborne's a good athlete, and I think he's got decent speed, but he has no burst. Like that whole job, and especially punts because you're standing still. That whole job is about, can you sort of put your foot in the ground and take off? KJ Osborne can't. Like, it's Bobby Wade, which as long as he doesn't fumble is okay, but it's not ideal. Smith-Marsette, while I'd be a little bit concerned that he actually could cough the ball up at times, he definitely has a burst and speed and can take off and gain speed. So if I'm the Vikings, if I feel he's not going to fumble a punt, because that's the most important thing, is don't fumble a punt, I'm way more intrigued by that. What was the grade for Rashod Breeland last night? Can you find that? Because I thought Rashod Breeland played really, really well.
Let's see here. Defensive over. I'll get you the overall defensive grades. So, wow. You say he played well?
I thought he played really well. He was the
top.
Nice
he was the top graded defensive player in that game last night.
Okay.
He had a 93.7 grade, 1 to 100. Kenny Willekes, Stephen Weatherly were the other two in the top three. Nick Vigil actually graded really well last night too, and technically he got the start last night because they were just playing their depth linebackers.
Yep.
Trying to see if anything else stood out. It's funny. Troy Dye, kind of mid-pack. Yeah, in terms of pressures last night, defensive pressures, Willekes had 3 in 13 pass rushing snaps. Weatherly had 2 in 19 pass rushing snaps.
Mm-hmm.
And Armand Watts had a couple pressures, and so did Jalen Holmes.
Yep.
So, interesting.
It was also intriguing that Zimmer said, and this is getting weird, okay? He flat out was asked and said, Chris Boyd right now is ahead of Cameron Dantzler. They're not happy there.
Really?
They're not happy with and Dantzler played deep into the second half, which I mean, this guy started 10 of the 11 games in which he played last year.
Yeah.
But when Chris Boyd, who, I mean, to me, Chris Boyd's a guy, but when Chris Boyd has jumped you and you're a former third-round pick who had really extensive starting experience as a rookie, that's bad news.
Yeah, so there was really, I don't think, any question going in to last night's game about that second outside cornerback slot. But if there was, the fact that Rashod Breeland played that well and Dantzler was still just like playing with second and third teamers in the deep into the second half.
But I mean, he's fallen behind Chris Boyd now. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Because at the start of camp, it was Patrick Peterson's going to start for sure. And then I thought, or they did, Breeland and Dantzler were going to battle at least a little bit. Yeah. I mean, Breeland had the inside track, and I think he signed here because he was told he was going to start, but that Breeland had the inside track on Dantzler. Well, now, and they started because they didn't play Peterson last night, it was Breeland and Boyd started. And so, yeah, Dantzler is on the outside looking in, and could he get cut? I don't think so, because if you cut him, you've now lost Jeff Gladney, your second first-round pick in 2020, and your third-round corner as well. So I don't think he gets cut. But they are definitely not pleased with his camp and his preseason. And this has trended in the wrong way for a guy who I think when we talked about him last year was seen as a future staple guy back there, not a guy who might be cut.
But you know what? The player that he was in the second half of the year last year is still in there. Like that guy who did that in the regular season against some really good quarterbacks at times, that guy is still in there. And I think it's probably best for him to just, now you can have this bad taste in your mouth and you can sit behind, well, not only Rashod Breeland, but maybe even Chris Boyd. And this might wind up being a good thing for him long-term for his career. Because if you were to throw him out into the fire and he gets wrecked because he's just like having a bad preseason, then, maybe it derails his career to some extent.
But what I don't like about this is it doesn't appear he's embraced this challenge. It appears he's like, I'm a backup now.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, okay, kid, you shouldn't have started last year, but I
You're
think,
also a starter on one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year,
yeah,
so let's
but
not get too haughty.
but I think if you're Cam Dantzler, this is a good opportunity for you if you approach it right. But if you're like, oh man, I lost my job, what's going on here? This sucks. I'm going, you're playing deep into the second half of a preseason game, and you were a starter. That ain't good news. If he looked around at his defensive teammates in the third quarter last night, he saw a lot of guys who come August 31st are not going to be on the roster.
Yeah. By the way, Vikings fans, so a couple really fun scratch games from the Minnesota Lottery. Vikings scratch games. The first one is the $5 game. It can win you up to $100,000. Comes in a cool holographic design, so even if you don't win, it's just kind of like a cool thing to have if you're
Keep
a
it.
Vikings fan. Yeah,
Exactly.
Frame it.
Keep it around.
Then there's the $2 Skull game, which can win you up to $15,000, and also great second chance prizes like Vikings tickets and merchandise. So if you're in and you're pumped, say I'm in to Vikings scratch games from the Minnesota Lottery. You must be 18 or older to play. We'll do our regular Monday episode tomorrow. We'll do a little pie chart of blame for where the Vikings are at with this 0-2 preseason start. Any other final observations off that game last night from you?
Yeah, one important one. So Anthony Barr didn't play again. He hasn't practiced of late. He's missed a ton of practice time. Zimmer was asked about that, and I think the question I said was, are you concerned now? Like, this is a lot of time. Like, you have to practice some. Like, you can't just not be playing, not be playing, and then magically be like, I'm healed. I'm great to play in games.
Yeah.
He said it was weird how he approached the question, or his answer to the question. He said, I am not concerned about him as a player. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying as a player. He said, but yes, I am concerned about the time missed and the fact that something is wrong. Now, he won't get into specifics, but I finally just came back and said, is it the pec that he tore last year in game 2? Because that can flare up. Like you don't just come back from that. It takes a while. And he did clarify it. That ain't it. So I don't know what the problem is, but it's a different problem. And I would say at this point, because of the lack of quality depth at that position, Phil, I would say it's definitely a concern because Kendricks is great and Vigil's going to start in the base. But Anthony Barr, no matter what we say about him, I think is a valuable player out there for this defense. And like to just dismiss and be like, oh, just put the next guy in. That's not true. Dye last night with Barr out wore the green dot thing to with the second team. The point being is, I don't know what's wrong, but this has turned a corner where I don't think we can just dismiss it as, oh, he'll be fine.
Yeah, there's just such a weird feeling about this preseason so far, right? Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of bad mojo here, and they do have 3 weeks to sort of iron and smooth some of this out. So wide receivers getting back fully healthy will be nice, but like Christian Darrisaw, got to be back at some point. Rashod Hill's not a long-term starter at left tackle. Anthony Barr, I know that he probably hasn't lived up to the expectations of a lot of people, but he's still a really important piece to this defense. So just a lot to be figured out. And then we'll see if they wind up signing Everson Griffin. I think they wanted to see another game before they want to evaluate some of these guys, and then maybe they'll make a decision on Griffin here early in the week. And we'll have you covered on that on Purple Daily here. Daily Vikings Entertainment presented by Surly Brewing Company. And that's a wrap for us today. We'll go enjoy a little Sunday fun day. It looks like you probably have some brunch plans. Yep. I'm going to get into a couple Bloody Marys.
Big brunch plans.
Love it.
Coffee right now, though.
Got to pace yourself.
And then Surly later on.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys.